So, I messed up. Hey, what's up, guys? It is Gio again, and I know it's been a while since my last vlog, blog, whichever you guys want to call it. Regardless, it's been a while from either or. And there's reason for that. We ran into some technical difficulties. So halfway through the project, I realized that I wanted to kind of build a new host server. I wanted to have a machine that can run my hypervisor, can also run TrueNAS, so I can have a NAS OS server on there, and also my Plex server for my media home streaming. So what I ended up doing is I ended up buying a bunch of parts from Micro Center, Facebook, eBay, basically anywhere that I can find cheap, some even used parts, and then make a new system. We have that system finally up and running today, and there it is. Now, it took a while to get it up and running because I ended up frying 4 hard drives that I purchased for the NAS portion of the system. Initially, I had bought 2 refurbished hard drives off of Amazon. Basically means they were older hard drives that they just wiped and resold. Anyway, they were $35 for 4 terabytes, so I bought 2 of them and I slapped them on. As soon as I installed them onto the system, to the new system, it wouldn't post anymore. And so I started kind of troubleshooting and taking everything apart and trying to realize what part was malfunctioning. Kind of find out the hard drives were no longer spinning or ever spinning. I don't know. I never tested them properly. My fault. I know. So I ended up returning them to Amazon and going to Micro Center and buying 4 terabyte Western Digital Plus. I bought 2 of them. I come back home. This time, I install them onto my actual system to test them out. They spin. They work. Perfect. My BIOS is able to detect them. I now go to install them onto my new server. And yet again, the system won't post. Come to find out, the hard drives, once again, aren't spinning. As soon as I unplug the hard drives, the system will boot up and I'm able to get into ESXi. So I know that the issues are the hard drives. They're getting killed. They're getting fried as soon as I plug into the system. So I start thinking maybe it's the used power supply that I bought for $50. I know what you're thinking, Gio, never buy a used power supply. Look, I'm broke. All right. I didn't want to buy a brand new power supply. I was trying to cut at corners, and unfortunately, I paid the price. So I go back to Micro Center. I return the now 2 dead drives, and I buy 2 brand new 4 terabyte Western Digital Red Plus again. And this time I buy a new power supply. Come back home, install them all into my system. Boom, everything works. Hard drives are no longer getting fried. So now I can move on to installing TrueNAS. That was the whole reason why I kind of got the new system and the whole reason why I even got these hard drives to begin with. So I go to install TrueNAS. Thankfully, the installation for TrueNAS is pretty simple. Within ESXi, I created a new virtual machine. I told it it's going to be free BSD based, and I basically just gave it a TrueNAS Core ISO. Setting up and configuring TrueNAS is actually really simple. It's kind of very similar to pfSense. You install it onto the virtual machine, and once it's up and running the virtual machine, I go to my computer and I access it through a web GUI. Once I got into the web GUI, I did some initial configuration, like setting a static IP on it, setting the time zone, basically all that, and creating the initial volume, which was my 3 drives combined into a RAID. Once I had that, I started creating data sets, a few one for my VMs, one for my Plex server, one that's going to be used to back up my PC, my personal PC, and a few other miscellaneous ones. Setting up TrueNAS was actually really easy, and I can't believe I've never done anything like it. I mean, it's pretty quick. There's so many guides out there as well. I'll leave a link in my blog post to the links I used to help walk me through the process, but it's kind of straightforward. Once you have it up and running, it is basically just up and running. It's there. Next came the tricky part of TrueNAS, and that was sharing these data stores that I created, these data sets, with ESXi, with Windows, and with my Linux machines that I have. Basically, with sharing it with my network so that I can access them. Now, for Windows and Plex, pretty easy to do. I basically set it up through SMB or Samba and created a new user called Plex or Geo, depending on which one I was going to do. Specify the proper permissions for the proper folders and proper data sets, and then basically connect that to them. Boom, easy peasy. Got those up and running. Now, passing the data store back to ESXi was a little trickier. Turns out you can't do it through Samba. I had to do it as an NFS share. setting up permissions was basically the same thing. I just had to do it as a different user. I couldn't use the Plex user for NFS because that was going to be going to ESXi. It would have been too confusing for stuff. So had to basically just create a new user for that and then pass it through then. But once it's all set up and running, it's all done. I don't really have to touch touch it again until I have to either edit the permissions or create a new data store. Pretty much everything now though can be managed through the web GUI, so I never really even have to touch the TrueNAS machine. Now you may be wondering, Gio, why did you need TrueNAS to begin with? To be honest, I really didn't. It was mostly just for ease of access and to get practice. Now, every enterprise network environment has some type of NAS system, whether it's Unraid or Open Media Vault or TrueNAS, TrueNAS being the most common one that you'll find. I also wanted to have a central network storage for my family to use so I can back up my brother's PCs in there in case they ever accidentally mess anything up in there. There's an image that I can restore to. Same with my computer. I have it taking daily backups and saving it to my NAS, and in case I ever need to restore it, I can easily do that. It's also a lot easier to have all my media on there for my local Plex server that I have on here. Eventually, I may share my Plex server with friends and families outside of my network, so that'll only be easier. And that's pretty much it. And now that I got TrueNAS set up and passed back to ESXi, I can create new virtual machines on there and run them off of there. So that's pretty cool. I now have to go back and set up my DC server again since I switched hosts entirely. I had to reset up my Active Directory, my domain, my DNS and DHCP servers, and then my Linux virtual machines. But now that I've done those before, it shouldn't be too difficult. It should hopefully, knock on wood, be smooth sailing. In my next post, I should have my DC, DNS, and DHCP servers set up and running, so we'll talk about those and talk about any troubles that I went. For now, that's going to do it. I hope you guys take care. Have a good one.